Welcome to Live Interactive English. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sam.
And today we are going to be reading a very interesting article about a very interesting rock.
Yes.
Or stone. The Rosetta Stone. You know a stone is important when it has its own name.
Yes.
Right? So this is not just, hey, look, a stone. I'm going to throw it in the river. No. This is a special stone, the Rosetta Stone. And we get a little bit of an idea of its history. Napoleon's unexpected gift to the world. Part 1 is the rest of our title. So now we know a little bit about what time, at least, we're talking about. The time of Napoleon. This is around the late 1700s to the early 1800s. This is an unexpected gift to the world.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Napoleon conquered a lot of places and fought a lot of battles and, you know, wasn't really super popular. So what kind of gift to the world was he giving?
Yeah, well, luckily, we do know, we see that he gave the Rosetta Stone, but this is kind of a, what is this? And some of you might know it and some of you might not know it, but it was a very important tool and it has to do with languages.
Right.
And that's why this is a very interesting gift, because if you think about it, there are so many languages in the whole history of human civilization. And it can be hard if you find artifacts from a long, long time ago to know what's written on them. Well, luckily for us, this Rosetta Stone kind of gives us a clue and kind of lets us know about one of these ancient languages that many people didn't, well, nobody knew how to read it before this stone showed up.
Exactly right. The Rosetta Stone unlocked the language of the ancient Egyptians, the people who built all those pyramids and all those other wonderful things who were around for thousands of years until they found this stone. No one really knew what the heck they were writing or talking about. So it's, you know, it's kind of useful. It's also a weird gift because he didn't find it, someone else found it, and he didn't give it, someone took it away.
Yeah. Maybe you have to say gift. I don't think he wanted to give the gift.
It's kind of like, here's a gift. But I took it from her. All right, let's get to the article and find out much more about this really, really cool rock.
In 2023, the movie Napoleon hit theaters. Over its lengthy runtime, the film showed many significant events from the French emperor's life. However, there was one big thing it left out: the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is one of the most important discoveries in history. The story goes that it was found in 1799 by Napoleon's soldiers when they were digging to build a fort in Rosetta, Egypt. They came across a 112.3 centimeter by 75.7 centimeter slab of gray stone. On it was carved a message written in 3 different writing systems. These writing systems were the Greek alphabet, Demotic script, and hieroglyphics.
All right, so the Rosetta Stone, it was kind of like the key that cracked the language of the ancient Egyptians. And a really cool thing about this is you can see it in real life in the British Museum in London. We'll get to how it ended up there.
So we see in our article, it says, in 2023, the movie Napoleon hit theaters. Over its lengthy runtime, the film showed many significant events from the French emperor's life. Okay, so 2023, there's a movie about Napoleon. It's pretty long and it's got a lot of information in it. And so if you watch it, you can kind of learn more about the French emperor's life if maybe you don't want to just go and read about it and you just want to watch it. It might not tell you everything, but it gives you some. And so it talks about the emperor. Now, an emperor is the ruler of an empire. And an empire is one government kind of controls a couple different countries or however many countries it has kind of conquered. And all of that is under the empire. And then you've got one ruler, similar to like how we would say a king or a president, but we have an emperor. An emperor rules the empire. And so that is the term for this kind of person. And it says the emperor ruled for many years. And yes, they usually rule until they die or are killed because they kind of are the chosen one and they rule the whole life.
There you go. It's kind of like a super king. If it's a woman, we would say empress, right? Queen Victoria was often called the Empress of the British Empire, because at that time, Britain ruled not just Britain, but India and Australia and Canada and New Zealand and many other places. And so it's a king who's got a lot of land. However, the article says there was one big thing the movie Napoleon, there was one big thing it left out, the Rosetta Stone. Yes, it was a good movie. You can learn a lot from watching it. Of course, Joaquin Phoenix, who played the Joker, he's Napoleon, directed by the great Ridley Scott, who's done lots of great movies. So Napoleon, though, had such a long and interesting life. Well, not too long, but a very interesting life, that there's a lot the movie didn't cover. And the Rosetta Stone is one of those things that's just not in the movie. And that's too bad, because as the article says, the Rosetta Stone is one of the most important discoveries in history. It truly is. We covered a lot in the movie. You see many of his battles. You see Napoleon's relationship with Josephine, his wife, that famous moment when he crowns himself emperor, takes the crown from the archbishop and puts it on his own head like he's the god of the country. All of that's in the movie, but Mayo, Rosetta Stone.
Oh, bummer.
That would be a different movie, I guess.
Yes. But that really probably should be a different movie, because the Rosetta Stone leads you down a totally different path to kind of learning the language of the ancient Egyptians. So you kind of go a different direction, I think. And so we see our article continues with, the story goes that it was found in 1799 by Napoleon's soldiers when they were digging to build a fort in Rosetta, Egypt. Okay, so it wasn't found by him, it was found by soldiers. They're trying to set up a fort in Rosetta, Egypt, to maybe continue or have an area that they want to kind of protect their land. So they need some soldiers to live there, so they need to build a fort. And while they're digging, boom, they find a stone.
There you go. I mean, of course, this is in Egypt, so there's a lot of old stuff buried under the ground, right, from the ancient Egyptians. But this Rosetta Stone was special. We'll find out why in a second. But yes, as Sam said, they were trying to build a fort. And a fort is a military building, some kind of military structure. It's a fighting building. It's kind of like a castle, so it will have towers, it will have walls, it will have a gate, it will have soldiers inside. Castles, though, were also maybe built for a rich person, a king, or someone to live in. So they might have some nice fancy rooms, some comfortable rooms. Forts, though, nothing fancy in them. They're just for soldiers. They're only for fighting. And you would build a fort in a certain area to protect that land, to control that land by having a lot of soldiers in a safe place to either attack outside or defend if the enemy comes to get them. If you've ever been to Tainan, of course, they have the famous Anping Fort down there. Some big walls, some military buildings, cannons on the walls, but nothing fancy like you might find in a castle, for example. The example sentence says, the fort on the hill was hard to attack. It's a good place to put a fort because, of course, from the hill you can see the land all around. All right, so there they are. We're going to build a fort. Here we are in Egypt. Boy, it's really hot. Hey, what's this? They found an interesting rock. What was it? It says they came across a 112.3 centimeter by 75.7 centimeter. That's the size. So about 112 centimeters by about 75 centimeters slab of gray stone. A slab would be a piece of rock that's kind of flat. So it's not round, it's kind of flat and wide. Think of like a thick piece of paper or something like that kind of size. Gray stone. And the really interesting thing is what was written into the stone. On it was carved a message written in 3 different writing systems. So they found language written up here, language down here, language down here, carved, so someone had taken the time to tick, 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 to knock those words into the stone, and they did it in 3 different languages. It's like the Google Translate of ancient times.
Yes, and so the 3 writing systems that they used, we're going to find out. It says these writing systems were the Greek alphabet, Demotic script, and hieroglyphics. Ah, okay. So again, you have the same message written in 3 different languages. Well, if you know one of them, maybe you can figure out the other ones. So, could be kind of interesting.
Very, very cool. And of course, hieroglyphics, for those of you who don't know, those are the kinds of ones with little pictures that you often see inside Egyptian temples. There'll be people standing like this, there'll be birds, there'll be feathers, there'll be all sorts of shapes. And it was a language that people used to be able to read and write, but couldn't do that anymore. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Let's take a break and then we'll be back.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。这2天的课程是关于 Rosetta Stone 罗塞塔石碑。不过课文一开始，它是先从一部电影讲起。他提到2023年这个电影《拿破仑》上映，而这部电影在它漫长的片长当中有呈现这一位法国皇帝一生中许多重大事件。可是啊，这部电影它遗漏一件大事，就是罗塞塔石碑。罗塞塔石碑是史上最重要的发现之一。据说它是在1799年被拿破仑的士兵发现，当时他们正在埃及的罗塞塔挖掘建造堡垒，那无意间发现一块长112.3公分、宽75.7公分的灰色石板，那上面有刻了一个讯息，可是有用3种不同书写系统写成。这3种书写系统是希腊字母、世俗体和象形文字。那文中的这个 Demotic Script 就是古埃及文字世俗体，那么 Hieroglyphic 就是指这个象形文字，尤其是指古埃及的象形文字。单字 Emperor 则表示皇帝。Fort 它是指堡垒或是要塞。那这边有2个重点，我们进入文法时间。我们来看第一个重点是 come across 的不同意思与用法。首先，第一个意思可以表达偶然发现、碰见或是无意中发现，这时候是做及物用。例如 ，He came across an old friend at the party。他在派对上遇到一位老朋友。那第二个用法呢，我们可以在后面接 as 加名词或形容词去表现出什么的样子，给人什么样的印象，让人觉得怎么样怎么样。例如 ，She came across as a very intelligent person。她给人的印象是个非常聪明的人。第二个重点是名词加分词 VING 或 PP， 也就是用分词片语来修饰名词的用法。主格关系代名词 who、which 或是 that 引导的形容词子句，可以省略关系代名词，然后把这个动词改为分词来修饰先行词。当形容词子句表示主动或进行的话，我们是改现在分词 VING； 表示被动的话，则是改成过去分词 PP。好，我们这边看一个例子。They visited a castle which was built in the 16th century. 他们参观一座建于16世纪的城堡。那其中的 which was built in the 16th century 这是形容词子句，我们可以把 which was built 简化成 built， 那句子就变成 They visited a castle built in the 16th century。 这时候就可以看到名词 a castle 后面接了过去分词 built 来修饰它。好，继续回课文中。
The officer in charge understood the significance of the find, and the stone became the property of the French army. A mere 2 years later, the British defeated Napoleon in Egypt. Under the terms of the Treaty of Alexandria, all of the riches the French had found had to be placed into British hands. So the stone was shipped to the UK. When it arrived in 1802, King George III gifted it to the British Museum. There it remains to this day.
All right, we are back. So we've just discovered the Rosetta Stone. Well, we haven't. Some French soldiers did. But the good thing is that a lot of the people down there, the French soldiers, were educated people. Napoleon actually sent hundreds of scientists with his soldiers to Egypt to learn all about Egypt, from the land, the plants, the animals, and the history. So they weren't just there to fight wars, they were there to learn. And the good thing is that someone there, right when they found it, had an idea that this is more than just a simple slab of stone. Maybe we shouldn't just put a fire on it and cook our eggs on top of it. Maybe we should, have a look at it more carefully.
Yes. So again, that is very lucky because it could have just been lost to time forever.
Broken up and thrown in the garbage.
Yes. And so it says, the officer in charge understood the significance of the find.
He went, oh.
Yes. And then and the stone became the property of the French army. So the officer looked at it and was like, yes, this is something important. I'm going to keep it, and then we'll figure out what to do with it from there. But definitely it's not just a rock that we're going to toss in the rock pile while we continue building our fort. So good for him for realizing that it was significant or realizing its significance. This is the noun form of the adjective significant, and it just means that it is important or it is something big and has a use or has a connection to whatever it is that you are talking about. So here we're talking about history. So this is significant or has significance to history. And if you're talking about maybe a location, there might be an important building in that location from its history. And you say that building has significance to this town, to its history, to the place. So importance, connection, anything like that. And our example sentence says, the church was built over 500 years ago, and it has great historical significance. So throughout the history of this place, this church has done many things in those 500 years, so it has an importance and a relevance and just means something to the people who live there.
There you go. You use that word importance, significance. We can also use the adjectives important or significant. It is not something you should just go, yeah, that doesn't matter. No, it does matter. All right. And this, of course, became the property of the French government. If you find something, it could be your property. There might be laws today about this sort of thing. But if you buy something and you own something, that thing is your thing. That thing is your property. We often use this word to talk about land or buildings that you buy or own, right? If you buy some property in the countryside, it might be an open field that you can build something on. If you buy an apartment in the city, that's your home, your property. Or it can also just be your stuff, your dongxi. Hey, that's my property. You can't take that bag away. Someone stole my property. They grabbed my cell phone off the table in the library when I wasn't looking. That's mine, not yours. It's my property. You can't touch. And if you take it, that would be stealing, I guess, because I own it, it's my property. For example, the house is private property, so we can't enter, whereas a shopping mall would be public property. So well, not really public property, but you can probably go in there because they won't say, no, get away or stay away. All right, so it was now owned by the French government because the French army found it. Again, these days you can't just go around Egypt picking up stuff and saying, this is mine, because there are laws. But back then, a mere 2 years later, so if this was in 1799 or so, by 1801, a mere or only 2 years later, the British defeated Napoleon in Egypt. That's right, the Battle of the Nile, also known as the Battle of Abu Qir Bay. The British wiped out the French fleet, destroyed all their boats. The French army was stuck in Egypt, and they just kind of had to get home, but they gave up. So that happened 2 years later, around 1801.
Yes, and we used this word mere when we were making that sentence, and this word is just a word that you use to show that something has a very, very small or unimportant difference. So for example, our example sentence says he lost the game by a mere 2 points. It was only just 2 points. That difference was so tiny, it was almost insignificant, but still significant enough to lose the game. So if you want to say that the difference between maybe this thing and this thing was really, really small, you can say mere. It was only a mere 2 years later. So they just built this giant fort and they were happy and they're like, yeah, we got Egypt, or we're doing well over here. And then just 2 years later, boom, all gone. So mere, just a little bit, just to show that it wasn't a very long amount of time or a big number or anything like that. And then in our article it says, under the terms of the Treaty of Alexandria, all of the riches the French had found had to be placed into British hands. That's probably not very happy thing for the French, but that's what happens if you lose in wars and battles. So there's always something that kind of comes with it.
I think the French army was stuck in Egypt, so to get them permission to go back to France, they kind of had to say yes to anything the British wanted. So they're like, give us all your treasure and we'll let you go home. And that's what happened.
Yeah. So the stone was shipped to the UK.
There you go. That's how it ended up in England, or the UK in Britain. When it arrived in 1802, King George III gifted it to the British Museum. He's the king. He could have kept it. He could have put a fire on it and cooked his eggs on top of it, but he decided not to. He's like, this looks interesting. Hey, science, language nerds, why don't you take it and figure out what it is? Gave it to the British Museum, which already existed at that time, and there at the British Museum in London, there it remains to this day. It's still there, in other words. So there you go. And that's why you can go see it. I saw it. You saw it. You can find pictures of it, and also why we know so much more about it. So it kind of has a happy ending, even though it started off with a little bit of, conquering and a little bit of a political maneuvering to get control of this very important artifact. So let's find out what we learned from it, and we'll do that tomorrow.
刚刚说拿破仑的士兵在埃及罗塞塔挖掘建造堡垒时，无意间发现一块石板，上面刻的讯息有用3种不同书写系统呈现。那负责的军官了解这个发现物的重要性，这块石碑变成了法国军队的财产。仅仅2年之后呢，英国人在埃及打败了拿破仑。那根据亚历山大条约的条款，法国人发现的所有财富都必须交给英国，所以这个石碑呢就被运往了英国。当他在1802年抵达时，乔治3世国王就把它送给大英博物馆。到现在，这个石碑都还在大英博物馆里。我们看单字 significance， 它是名词，表示重要性或是特别意义。它的形容词是 significant， 可以形容重要的、具有特殊意义的或是显著的。如果在前面加上否定字首 in， 变成 insignificant， 可以形容不重要的、无足轻重的。再看下一个单字 property， 它可以当不可数名词来表达所有物、财产，也可以当可数名词来表达特性、性质。下一个单字 mere 它是形容仅仅、只不过。我们补充一下，刚刚在讲到战争的时候 Mike 老师有提到 fleet fleet 可以表达舰队或者是船队。那老师还提到罗塞塔石碑这个文物的取得历经了征服、占领还有政治操纵。那老师说的 maneuver 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 这个动词就表示操控或是控制。还有提到 artifact 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 表示手工艺品或是人工制品。好，那么以上这些讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
In 2023, the movie Napoleon hit theaters. Over its lengthy runtime, the film showed many significant events from the French emperor's life. However, there was one big thing it left out: the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is one of the most important discoveries in history. The story goes that it was found in 1799 by Napoleon's soldiers when they were digging to build a fort in Rosetta, Egypt. They came across a 112.3 centimeter by 75.7 centimeter slab of gray stone. On it was carved a message written in 3 different writing systems. These writing systems were the Greek alphabet, Demotic script, and hieroglyphics. The officer in charge understood the significance of the find, and the stone became the property of the French army. A mere 2 years later, the British defeated Napoleon in Egypt. Under the terms of the Treaty of Alexandria, all of the riches the French had found had to be placed into British hands. So the stone was shipped to the UK. When it arrived in 1802, King George III gifted it to the British Museum. There it remains to this day.
Hey, it's Kiwi on the street.
I'm Kiki.
And I'm Winnie. Say, what time did John say he was coming? What's his ETA?
ETA? What's that?
Oh, that's his estimated time of arrival.
Oh, okay. Well, he told me he was probably going to be here around 12.
Okay, so his ETA is noon. Well, it's time to work on abbreviations.
Okay, it's time to work on our abbreviations. Our first one is GTR. What could that mean?
Go to run.
So I'll say, I GTR.
Got to go.
Close.
Got to run.
I'm going to be late. I GTR. This one is,
This one is running.
okay.
Go to running.
I'll give you half a point. Got to run.
I got to run. Okay.
Another try with FOMO or FOMO.
Fear of.
Oh, my friends all got to go to the concert. I didn't get to go. Now I have FOMO.
Fear of losing out. Fear of missing out.
Yay! Fear of missing out. Very good. Okay, last but not least, we've got, this one's easy. This one is one word that they shorten.
Later. This one is easy.
No, apparently not.
Okay. Later.
Later.
Hey, later. What have we learned today?
It's time to work on some abbreviations. Our first one is GTR. Gotta run. Got to run. So usually you would say this when you're saying goodbye. So I've gotta leave, I've gotta run. This is when you're kind of in a hurry and you're letting the person know you can't stay long. I've gotta run. Then we have FOMO or FOMO, fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. So when you're missing out on something, that means you can't participate. So for example, if your friends went out to eat dinner without you, you have a feeling that you're missing out on all the conversations and all of the inside jokes. So you have a fear of missing out. Or you could also say, I have major FOMO. Last but not least, we have a word that has been shortened, L8R, or later, later. So you could say, see you later. Usually we use this when we're texting. That's all we have for today. Kiwi later.